Former Vice President Joe Biden is currently the Democratic frontrunner. I know everybody's been pretty distracted as of late, but we do have a primary election going on. I know it seems like forever ago, and we're all kind of distracted, but understand that is still going on. Now, both candidates, since it's definitely an important issue, and it was before, both have a plan for healthcare, right? Now, it's important to note that only one of them has a plan for universal healthcare, and the other one is Joe Biden. And on Monday, he told an MSNBC host that we don't need universal healthcare, and that, in fact, Medicare for all wouldn't help any of our situations. Take a look.
Because as you've been seeing, our healthcare system seems to be crumbling underneath this crisis. There is not enough. There's not enough support for the healthcare system. There's not enough support for the American people inside of the healthcare system. Are you now reconsidering your position when it comes to single-payer healthcare?
Single payer will not solve that at all. The thing that is needed is, for example, we have a whole number of hospitals that are being so stretched, including rural hospitals, they're going to need more financing. That doesn't come from a single payer system. That comes from the federal government stepping up and dealing with the concerns that they have, the reimbursement that they're going to get, how they're going to be able to move forward, and how they're going to be able to provide all the needed help that are needed in their community.
So Joe Biden says, well, I mean, government-sponsored insurance isn't going to help the rural hospitals, but government stepping up and paying the hospitals is going to help the hospitals. So literally, you're proposing still a government intervention in the healthcare system and government funding. It seems a little strange, considering your position, but all right. So now he does bring up an important issue of hospitals, rural hospitals that are underfunded, right? So now there's a study out there that says if we have single payer and we get to Medicare rates for reimbursement, for example, and don't change anything else, then these hospitals will see a hit. These hospitals will close, right? That analysis, however, is a little suspect because it was commissioned by the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future. That is a coalition of hospitals, insurers, and pharmaceutical companies that are fighting the public option and against single payer. So they're fighting against both. They don't want any change. Interesting, right? And so it's interesting that he talks about offhandedly results from that study that, that'll close, right? Now, before I get into the analysis about that, why that's wrong, I do have to note that was a good question. MSNBC actually using a question, framing it from a progressive perspective. Like, hey, look, now that we're in the middle of this crisis, maybe you should be having second thoughts. Are you having second thoughts about not supporting single payer? And tell me why. That's actually a good question. It's a good question. So to be fair on that, right? So now back to why rural hospitals are in some danger, right? And why Medicare for all would actually be a better system for that. See, right now, if they continue to be funded the way that they are, and we do a single payer system, then yes, you're going to have some issues with funding hospitals, right? Fortunately for us, all the single payer proposals out in the House and the Senate literally take that into account and allocate extra funding towards hospitals in rural areas. The Jayapal bill, for example, which is basically just like Bernie's proposal in the Senate, would abandon per-patient payments, which is what we use right now, and instead fund hospitals through what is called a global budget. Under global budgeting, hospitals would receive an annual lump sum distributed in monthly installments, similar to how U.S. fire departments or hospitals in Canada are financed. Remember, Canada actually does have universal health care, does have a single-payer type system, and it is better than ours. Now, it has its issues, of course. Anybody who's Canadian will say, look, yeah, it's not a perfect system. A lot of the conservatives there have been defunding it and underfunding it, but compared to the American system, it's vastly superior. And so that's how that would work under our system. That study from that lobbyist group does not take that change into account. Under the system, by the way, here's how it would work. Hospitals would receive extra funding in case of unexpected deficits and would no longer keep the surpluses for themselves. So now, at present, surpluses, or the expectation of surpluses, available to pay back loans or bonds, is the main source of funding for hospital upgrades or expansions. That leads hospitals to incentivize, to be incentivized to invest their surpluses in capital projects that will maximize future profits and surpluses. So instead of doing general care, they're like, let's build a specific wing for stuff that's elective, for example, or stuff that, costs a lot, these surgeries that cost money, so that we can expect to make more profit so that we can do more expansions, right? And so that's the current system. That's how that it's set up right now. That also increases the cost of healthcare everywhere else. And so that's just an example of some of the waste that's in our system right now. It doesn't need to be there. If you get rid of that waste by changing the funding model and then taking the surpluses from hospitals in major cities and transferring that to rural hospitals to cover their costs, then you will keep those hospitals open. And that is what both bills aim to do. So what Biden is doing is look, there's two possibilities, right? Either Biden is lying, right? Or he doesn't know. And look, there's a good chance that he doesn't know, because Joe Biden is not exactly very well put together at this point in time. So he might not know, and he might also not care. Both, right? But the fact that the former vice president is rejecting Medicare for all in the midst of a global pandemic, that's insane. Absolutely insane. And that fact was not lost on observers. In fact, Dig Left researcher Andrew Perez says the primary voice in speaking out against single payer right now in the middle of an epidemic is Joe Biden. Look, we could expect it from Republicans, right? We can expect that from Donald Trump. Donald Trump, to be fair, doesn't have an ideology. His only ideology is me. How's it going to affect me? How's it going to help me? So if Donald Trump saw that it was in his own best financial and personal and political aspirations to support a Medicare for all system, I think he would do that. After all, there's a video of him prior to 2016 talking about how great Australia's healthcare system is, which is a single payer, and how terrible America's is. I mean, there's that, right? But Joe Biden, he's like, no. And by the way, he also said, and this is infuriating, that if somehow Medicare for all got through the Republican Congress, right, in some form or another, right, and obviously it wouldn't be the full Bernie Sanders version. There'd probably be some things that are left out of it, things that that we couldn't do, or changes that be made. But generally, if something resembling Medicare for all, a single payer system, came out of Congress and landed on Joe Biden's desk, he said he would not sign it. Ridiculous. The Nation literary editor David Marcus said, quote, "This is losing politics. In almost every state that's held a primary so far, including those Biden has won, exit polls show a majority of Democrats prefer single payer." And of course, for good reason, right? Because right now we have stories of California teens, for example, who died after being turned away from a hospital from lack of insurance. I covered that story on the show. That is our system under private for-profit insurance. And so, and I know there's going to be some people that are like, well, look, I like single payer, but face the facts, Jack. Here's the deal. Single payer is never going to pass. And so we need to do public option because that's the only thing that's going to pass. That's a terrible Joe Biden impression. I don't know why I went in that direction, but look, you're saying that a single payer or that public option is going to pass when literally Mitch McConnell is the grim reaper of legislation. No, the only way a public option passes or a single payer passes is if we get a majority of people that believe in that system in Congress. Now, to be fair, we are a long way away from that. But I don't know, if we had somebody on the ticket that energized voters into getting out and voting for progressives who actually do believe in this policy, would pass this policy, and pressure our politicians to pass this policy, well, then maybe we'd have a much better chance, defeating Mitch McConnell or defeating these other Republicans. And besides, Medicare for All is even somewhat popular among Republicans, more than the ACA is. And so let's be honest about that. But right now, Joe Biden is actually has less enthusiasm than Hillary Clinton does. In fact, he's got the lowest amount of enthusiasm of any Democratic candidate. So that's not going to translate well down ticket. Joe Biden is ahead of the ticket. How many people are really going to be encouraged and energized and excited to go and vote for him and to vote down ticket? Not a lot. Not a lot. And so that's the problem, right? And it's a lot of problem. But now the other thing, and there's a lot of things to touch on why Joe Biden is 100% wrong about going against single payer. And this is why the dynamic of the race has changed. This is why Bernie Sanders needs to stay in. It's because right now we are facing an unparalleled crisis, right? We have a system that right now leaves 27 million people out. Joe Biden's plan would still leave 10 million people out and uninsured, right? And still you'd have the issues with people who couldn't afford the premiums, copays, and deductibles. By the way, a public option would still have deductibles, would still have premiums. And so it would have all those things. It would just be a little bit cheaper. And so you would end up having more sick and older people on that public option. And you would have all the healthy young people giving money to the insurance companies. And so that's a huge win for the insurance companies and a fail for, of course, the public healthcare system, which would then be overloaded and there would be the cost. How do you pay for that? How do you pay for that? Whereas Medicare for All covers everybody and it's cheaper because it eliminates all that corporate bureaucracy. I know a lot of people are like, I hate bureaucracy. Well, corporate bureaucracy is bureaucracy. So, but the other biggest problem, the thing that's really getting laid bare at this moment in time is employer-sponsored insurance. Joe Biden says, well, look, we can't go for a single-payer healthcare system because people don't want it. No, you're going to get rid of their private healthcare. No, people like their private insurance. People love their employer-sponsored insurance. Well, just in 1 week, 3.3 million people filed for unemployment, lost their jobs, right? You lose your job, you lose your employer-sponsored insurance. And I can guarantee that with healthcare costs so high, a lot of people would not be able to afford COBRA. So COBRA, of course, is basically allows you to keep your insurance, but instead of your employer pitching in however much they do, whether it be 50% or 75% or however much, that full cost gets transferred over to you. And so you have to pay that. And so there are people that are facing possibly $1,500 a month, $2,000, $3,000 a month just to keep their health insurance. And they don't have that. They don't have that kind of money. And so to continue to support a system that does that, I mean, it's ridiculous. These people can't afford it. And they would all be helped by a Medicare for All system. And so, look, we're facing a situation right now where 50% of all Americans get their insurance through work, and these same people are losing work. And so it doesn't matter how much you like supposedly your private insurance or your private employer-sponsored insurance. In a recession or a depression, you are very likely to lose that insurance. It's gone. It's gone. So that's why the system is deeply immoral and it's wrong. And it's also stupid. We have a stupid healthcare system. It is literally dumb. There is no country in the world that does it the way that we do. And when you bring it up to people, even conservatives who have in other countries cut their healthcare systems, right? Even they look at what America is doing as like, no, we would get run out of town if we even proposed a healthcare system like America's. No, we'll keep it. We'll just slowly defund it and give more tax breaks to corporations. Because, of course, that seems to be the common thread linking conservatives all over the world is, hey, we like corporations. And we like our donors, right? We like giving companies money. And so the system we have is deeply immoral, problematic, and way too expensive. And the fact that the front runner, the Democratic Party now, even at a time where exit polls show that a majority of Democratic voters, Democratic primary voters, sometimes in large majorities, are favoring a single-payer Medicare for all system, even knowing, like, yes, we will lose our private insurance. Our private insurance kind of sucks anyway, and a Medicare for all thing would be much, much better. And so, yes, we would rather go for that. But you still have Joe Biden saying, nope, we're going to double down. I don't care. I get help, I get checks from the insurance companies and the healthcare industry and the pharmaceutical industry. And so I'm not going to go in your direction. I'm going to go in their direction because they're the ones that signing my checks. That's unfortunately corporate Democrats and Joe Biden on this issue in a nutshell. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.